When we refer to an event or a period of history as a watershed, we're borrowing a term from the field of hydrology that describes a topographical plain or basin where the shape and slope of the land masses combine to make the flow of rivers or streams or precipitation move in a single, irreversible direction. You may not even know that you're standing in a watershed until the rain begins to fall, and you will see clearly and unmistakably that the path it takes is inevitable. This year, across our country, we celebrate 150 years of Reform Judaism in America. The movement was small and humble when it began in Cincinnati, Ohio in the 1880s, but it created a forceful and irresistible current of history that carried the whole Jewish world forward. It was indeed a watershed period in American Jewish life. Our movement was the brainchild of Isaac Mayer Wise, a visionary German rabbi who came to the United States in 1846 and planted the seeds in America's fertile soil for a completely new kind of Judaism. Rabbi Wise believed that he had come to America at exactly the right time, when the world was ready for a spiritual revolution. The czars were dead. The age of pogroms was drawing to a close. America's westward expansion was opening new frontiers of prosperity and promise. A sense of optimism was in the air. The nation was ripe for the creation of a new, forward-thinking American Judaism. Rabbi Wise set to work immediately upon settling in Cincinnati. He wrote a new prayer book, founded a seminary to train rabbis and a professional union to represent them. And in 1873, he founded the Union for American Hebrew Congregations, a network of synagogues that would serve as the heart of a new movement to be called Reform Judaism. This new model of Judaism could only have been born here, Wise believed, because in the United States, we would no longer need to live as outsiders. Rabbi Wise had figured out a lot about what America valued. He argued that Jews could be fully at home here by taking on three very attainable commitments: education, empathy, and assimilation. Americans already recognized the value of education. Wise broke with the orthodoxies of the past and taught that science did not pose a challenge to religion, but could actually deepen one's faith. He wanted Reform Judaism to represent the end of religious superstition, the end of outdated practices and traditions mindlessly transplanted from the old world. This movement would have high standards of integrity and reason. For the seal of the new Reform Seminary, he chose words from the book of Genesis. Haboker or, in the morning, let there be light. In this modern world, learning would be the new currency. Reform Jews would also need to develop broad-ranging empathy, a universalist concern for all human beings, especially the impoverished and vulnerable. Wise wrote about the spirit of broad humanity, which would inspire Reform Jews to participate in the great task of modern times, to advocate for righteousness and seek solutions for society's injustices. And third, we had to be willing to assimilate, to blend into American culture smoothly. If there were things that made us appear different from our neighbors, the way we ate, or the way we dressed, speaking Yiddish instead of English, we should do away with them and become as American as we could be. These three things, education, empathy, and assimilation, would be the nominal price we'd pay for full admission to this promised land where we'd finally be at home. Jewish life in this new world would be completely different from the ghettos and shtetls our ancestors had fled. This was our Golden Medina, a Garden of Eden far from the dark and violent past on the other side of the globe. And to Wise's credit, he was mostly right. He placed a substantial bet on the future of American Jewish life, and it paid off. Today, Reform Judaism is the largest and most widely embraced of all Jewish denominations in America. Reform Jewish identity has proven to be seamlessly compatible with American life and culture. Jews in America feel very much at home, and we have done very, very well. Today, Jews thrive in the highest echelons of society and the most elite sectors of the American economy. We enjoy access and success far beyond the wildest dreams of our ancestors. And social ethics have also been key to our experience and our success here. Jews have been at the vanguard of every significant movement for social liberation in the past 150 years. We have fought for civil rights, equality for women, dignity for immigrants, and access for people with disabilities, acceptance and liberation for LGBT Americans. And Wise's principle of cultural assimilation has also yielded rich benefits. Today, Jews comprise barely 2% of the American population. And yet this week, the New York Times is running recipes for High Holy Day meals. And the most popular streaming series on Netflix is a romantic comedy about the love life of a handsome young rabbi. Rabbi Wise dreamed of a day when Jews could live full, authentic lives in America and be at home anywhere in the world. And he had no idea how quickly things would change. Because what he got wrong, desperately, painfully wrong, is that the truth is that it only matters partly how much we feel we belong, if the rest of the world feels just as strongly that we do not. He never could have imagined how fickle the world would be, how quickly tolerance could turn to resentment and resentment to hatred. It is true that now Jews can feel at home anywhere, but the proliferation of Jewish life around the world has been used as proof by extremists on the radical left that Jews are settler colonialists. And at the same time, by white supremacists on the right, who say that our presence is a wildly contagious social contaminant, infecting the societies in which we live. Anti-Semitism is nothing new. There have always been those who hated us. But only a few times in history have the people who hated us also had access to political power, deadly tools of mass destruction, and an appetite for violence. We had such high hopes about this period of Jewish history. We clung desperately to the belief that human progress would mean that we'd never again have to see the gruesome mechanisms of destruction set into motion by the zeal of fanatical bigots. But here we are, in a year when we have faced the presence of evil on earth and found ourselves shielded from it only by the thinnest and most fragile margins. The Jewish world of today, the one that came into existence on October 7th of last year, is entirely different from the one we inhabited before. Every institution of the Jewish world has changed, forced to adapt to hostility and peril that feel completely different from the sort that our parents and grandparents knew. The nightmares that we watched unfolding on that terrible day, and on every terrible day that followed, felt worse than anything we had read about in history books about the Jewish past. The unthinkable atrocities that the terrorists committed, the exuberance with which they recorded their deeds on video, and the delight they took as they tortured and murdered, violated and desecrated the bodies of the very old and the helplessly young. Their joy, so uncontrollable that they called their mothers to brag. about what they had accomplished. We knew we were living in a new world last October, not only because of the depravity of those crimes, but also because after the bloodshed came to an end, we looked around and found that we were grieving alone. After the Holocaust, the world assured us that they would never again let another massacre of Jews happen on their watch. Well, not only did they watch, but in many cases, they celebrated. On October 8th, while we were still counting our dead, the world exploded in massive rallies of solidarity and support, not for the victims of Hamas's crimes, but for their perpetrators. These were not anti-war rallies. They weren't protesting the IDF's invasion of Gaza because the ground war didn't begin until October 13th. They weren't protesting the air campaign because that didn't start until October 10th. These were hundreds of thousands of people around the globe gathering on October 8th to rejoice over the events of the day before. That is why, for so many Jews, myself included, October 7th was an irreversible breaking point, an awakening, an opening of the eyes, after which nothing looked the same. That was a watershed, in the truest sense, a time when I looked down at the ground beneath my feet and saw that everything was flowing in one very frightening direction. Yom Kippur is a time for cheshbon nefesh, an unflinching inventory of the self, a time for us to examine who we are and what we believe and which parts of ourselves we must do away with to build lives more closely aligned with who we want to be in the year ahead. This self-examination is extra poignant on this 150th anniversary because it shines a harsh light on just how much of the progressive and optimistic underpinnings of our reform movement that were constructed so thoughtfully in 1873 have been thoroughly hollowed out by the events of the past year. Isaac Mayer Wise thought that with enough study and hard work, we could earn our place in this promised land and inoculate ourselves against hatred. He was wrong. Education did not save us. Today, more people have more access to more information than ever before in human history, and still we are inundated with a never-ending flood of the world's worst anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. He thought our embrace of universal social ethics would provide us some safety when the need arose. It did not. Our partners and other minority communities with whom we had stood shoulder to shoulder when they were imperiled did not come to our aid in the face of spiraling anti-Semitism, and with few exceptions, did not even offer us words of comfort when we experienced the worst day of brutality and mass murder since the Holocaust. Rabbi Wise thought we could be protected by blending in to American social and cultural institutions, and he was wrong. This year, the hatred of Jews, naked, unabashed hatred, has surged like wildfire through the most distinguished academic societies, professional organizations, and Ivy League campuses. But for me, the most powerful rejection of Rabbi Wise's assimilationist argument is this hard truth. Listen, any system in which people are asked to trade away pieces of their identity in exchange for belonging is not liberation, it is oppression. 150 years ago, we Jews agreed to pay that price for admission to American life. We changed our names, changed the way we dressed, changed the way we ate. We did all of that and would do more in order to belong, and it was a terrible mistake. This was the same thing we denounced when we fought for gender equality and racial justice and marriage equality for our gay and lesbian siblings. In a just system, no one can be pressured to barter away their identity in order to be admitted to the world. And we cannot tolerate a system that offers to accept someone only under the condition that they deny an intrinsic part of who they are. Maybe this is another layer of meaning for why we have the tradition to read the Akedah, the story of the binding and near sacrifice of Isaac on the High Holy Days. Because what that text does is to dispel the misconception that if we only sacrificed a little more, if we only offered a bit more blood, if we only offered a little more of what is precious to us, we'd be left alone and we would be safe. That is a scam, and God rejects it out of hand. I'm a different person than I was before last October 7th. This perspective has driven much of my self-reflection on these holy days, and it's contributed to a rigorous re-examination of my Jewish identity and my identity as a Zionist. 1 year and 5 days ago, I was a Zionist primarily because I believed that Israel represented the promise of what it could look like when Jewish values are implemented at scale. Culture and kindness, charity and concern, and national identity that blossomed from the timeless ethical aspirations of the Jewish people. I was a Zionist because I thrilled to the idea of a Jewish nation having its own symphony orchestra, its own public health service, a Jewish infrastructure to look after the poor and provide resources for survivors of oppression, a network to care for people with disabilities, a world-class university system producing the best academic research and groundbreaking scientific advancements, a Jewish state that led the world in business, culture, ecology, and justice. I'm still moved by that vision of what Israel can be. But my Zionism is different now. After October 7th, I've come to embrace a different kind of promise of the Jewish state. It is something no one else can take from us. A place where our safety can be protected and prioritized, where Jews no longer need to choose between our identity and our security. A year ago, I would have felt self-conscious about admitting this in public. I would have felt embarrassed about that kind of Zionism. It feels like an outdated relic of Jewish tribalism and particularism. But one of the ways that October 7th changed me is that I no longer feel shame about wanting to protect what is mine. It's time for us to recommit to a revitalized reform Zionism, one rooted in the same deep values that shaped our movement 150 years ago. It is time for us to support a vision for Israel that picks up where Rabbi Wise's prediction for American Jewry faltered. A Jewish state committed to study and learning, a Jewish state built upon ethical concern for the other, a Jewish state in which no one needs to sacrifice an intrinsic part of who they are to deserve care or gain admission to public life. When I was in Israel a few months ago with our Shirley Barish Memorial Israel Experience participants, I sat down with our tour bus driver, Ahmed, for coffee and conversation. The war in Gaza was raging, and I asked about his perspective. Well, he said, the most important thing is that we do everything we can to get our people back. Our people? I asked Ahmed. Yes, he said. The hostages are our people, and we need to bring them home. Ahmed, the Arabic-speaking Muslim Palestinian, who is also an Israeli citizen, felt so strongly that those hostages in captivity were his people, and he longed to see them brought home safely. That is the kind of Zionism I support. And that is exactly the kind of Zionism that Israeli society has to celebrate and encourage. A Zionism that elicits love and loyalty from all its citizens, including Palestinian citizens like Ahmed, and which demonstrates genuine concern for them as well. A state which strongly defends its citizens' safety, protects their civil liberties, and remains committed to equality, tolerance, and the rule of law. A place rigorously committed to critical inquiry in science and the arts. A state that protects the natural resources of its land, sea, and sky. A state that affirms its ethnic and religious diversity, but is hedged firmly against any extremism that promotes violence. A place of real, empathic concern for those who are suffering, including the civilians who suffer under the tyranny of Hamas. A place whose very existence is a firm rebuttal to those who claim, erroneously, that Zionism and liberalism cannot coexist. On Monday afternoon, October 7th, I watched the memorial service live streaming from Israel. And next to the video, there was a chat screen where people watching the service could post greetings and good wishes. And as the broadcast played, the comments scrolled steadily up the window. And in that stream of comments coming in from all over the world, there was one word that was repeated over and over again in Hebrew. I will teach it to you. The word is itchem. We are with you. Itchem, itchem, itchem. We are with you, they said. We are with you from London and Madrid. We are with you in Belgium and Brazil, in Uruguay and Ukraine and Uganda. We are with you, and you are with us. That is the sort of reform Zionism I want to invite you into this year. One strengthened by unity and solidarity, diversity, and the recognition that we need each other to be safe and to be strong. So much has changed since last October 7th. This time last year, we sat in these same seats and read the liturgy's grim and foreboding words about who would live and who would die. We shuddered at its imagery of fire and water, of swords and famine and plague, and we had no idea what was coming. We've learned a lot of hard lessons over the past year. We've become more aware of our vulnerabilities and of our alliances and friendships, and how important it is not to be alone when things go bad. The hydrologists tell us that it's actually very easy to tell whether or not you are standing in a watershed. All you have to do is wait, because as soon as a hard rain falls, you'll see which way everything is flowing. And when that happens, when the water level rises and the current increases, what I want you to do is put down your feet and stand fast. And then look around at those standing beside you, those who share your destiny, the people here with you tonight, those with whom we are all securely bound together, even in the heart of the storm, by a threefold cord of shared history, common purpose, and unapologetic Jewish pride. My friends, on this holiest of days, at the beginning of this brand new year, let us draw courage and fortitude from those priceless gifts and from the steadfast presence of our indomitable Jewish people. And let us repeat once again the timeless refrain of resistance, defiance, and resolve. Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel lives.